The strangest secrets of 90 seconds action cinema were never in the blockbusters everyone remembers, but in the tapes that gathered dust in video stores no one visits anymore. In those forgotten aisles, filmmakers built worlds where justice was outsourced, heroes were programmable, and human lives were just variables in someone else's experiment. A weapon that thinks, a killer owned by a system, a broken cop walking streets no law wants to claim, a man rewriting the rules the courts refuse to hold, a virtual fighter chasing a woman who might not even exist. They looked like cheap fantasies. They played like warnings. These are the 5 films that revealed what Hollywood tried to hide. The early 1990 seconds were supposed to be a time of peace. The Cold War was over, the wall had fallen, and the world was promised a cleaner, safer age. But Hollywood didn't believe it. In the shadows of neon streets and half-built skyscrapers, filmmakers started asking darker questions. What happens to soldiers when the wars end, but the violence doesn't? What happens to justice when technology starts taking orders? Audiences were still cheering for heroes in capes, but a different kind of hero was being born, the broken, the programmed, the forgotten. These films weren't made to inspire, they were made to expose. They looked cheap, filmed in warehouses and alleys, but their scripts whispered something studios didn't want to hear, that America's new enemies weren't foreign powers anymore. They were the systems built in silence and the men who obeyed them too well. They called them direct-to-video, B-movies, throwaways. But under their pixelated explosions, they carried a strange, inconvenient truth that humanity itself was becoming expendable. Let's rewind to the 5 films that crossed the line between entertainment and confession. Film 1, Project Shadowchaser, 1992. The perfect soldier doesn't need orders, just programming. In Project Shadowchaser, a rescue mission turns into a war between man and machine when an android built for combat escapes control. Directed by John Ayres, this low-budget sci-fi thriller looked like just another Terminator imitation. But behind its steel-gray visuals and echoing hallways was a far more disturbing idea that the future's deadliest weapon would look human enough to follow. The story follows a synthetic assassin sent into a hostage crisis, while a cryogenically frozen engineer is mistaken for the man who built him. Every punch, every bullet, every malfunction exposes the same horror. No one remembers who's real anymore. In an age obsessed with perfect efficiency, humanity has become the system's greatest error. What audiences dismissed as a cheap robot flick was, in truth, a reflection of post-Cold War paranoia. The android wasn't just a machine, it was the soldier America built, and then forgot how to switch off. And when he turned on his makers, the screen wasn't showing fiction. It was showing what happens when creation stops recognizing its creator. Because sometimes the monster isn't the one that escapes, it's the one that obeys. Film 2, The Silencer, 1992. He was trained to kill without question until he discovered who was giving the orders. The Silencer tells the story of a contract assassin hired to eliminate targets he never truly understands. Starring Lynette Walden and Glenn Grove, the film never made it to the multiplex. It lived in the flickering light of late-night cable, filed away among hundreds of forgotten VHS thrillers. But beneath its gunfire and shadows was something that hit too close to home, a portrait of obedience without morality. The film's nameless hitman becomes the weapon of a system that hides behind patriotism and profit. Every mission he completes erases another part of his conscience, until the silence he serves begins to sound like his own. There's a moment, a glance in a mirror, a hesitation before pulling the trigger when he realizes that the voice giving him commands might not belong to a government, or even a man, but to an institution that thrives on invisible control. Audiences ignored it. Critics dismissed it. But the Silencer dared to say what bigger films only hinted at, that justice can be manufactured, and loyalty can be programmed. In its stillness, it asked a dangerous question. If you're told who the enemy is your whole life, would you even notice when it's you? Film 3, Street Night, 1993. He saved others because no one came to save him. In Street Night, Jeff Speakman plays Jake Barrett, a former cop, haunted by his own violence, pulled back into the chaos of gang wars that the city pretends not to see. On the surface, it's another early, 90 seconds martial arts thriller. Neon streets, fast kicks, smoke, and grit. But beneath the action, it carries something heavier, the guilt of a country trying to forget what it taught its sons to do. Barrett isn't fighting for justice. He's fighting to keep what little remains of it from vanishing. The film's Los Angeles feels more like a battlefield than a city. Its gangs functioning as proxies for a deeper sickness, the decay of institutions that once claimed moral ground. Between every brawl, every broken bottle, there's the echo of the same idea. Violence doesn't end when the uniform comes off. The movie failed commercially, but thematically it revealed something that frightened studios, that the real war wasn't abroad anymore, but home. Street Night was released in 1993, just months after the Los Angeles riots, when America's streets were still smoking from the fire. And like its protagonist, the film was punished for trying to heal wounds no one wanted to admit were there. Because sometimes, the streets tell the truth long before the headlines do. Film 4. The Expert, 1995. When the law failed, he rewrote the rules. The Expert starred Jeff Speakman again, but this time, his war was personal. The story follows a former Special Forces operative whose sister is murdered, and the killer walks free on a technicality. The courtroom offers him no justice, only procedure. So he does what the system can't. He builds his own. On the surface, it's a revenge thriller, traps, training montages, and a silent man with steady hands. But what lies beneath is a brutal indictment of institutional decay. The film was released in an era when America was questioning its own justice system, a system that protected criminals with red tape while abandoning victims in cold hallways. Hollywood was still producing heroic fantasies where lawmen stood for truth. The Expert tore that image apart. Behind the scenes, the script was rewritten by producers who wanted less philosophy, more blood. The director fought to keep the story's core, that the greatest threat to justice wasn't chaos, but bureaucracy. The result was a fractured film, half vengeance, half warning, buried by distributors who didn't know how to market something so uncomfortable. In the end, the movie's title became prophetic, because expertise means nothing when the system itself is broken. And the people who built it are the only ones still pretending it works. Film 5. Virtual Combat, 1995. In a world made of code, he fell in love with a ghost. Directed by Andrew Stevens, Virtual Combat took the familiar shape of mid-90-second cyber-action holograms, neon grids, and cops chasing criminals who don't technically exist. But beneath its flashy surface lay a question that modern cinema still struggles with. What happens when we start feeling more inside the simulation than outside it? Dawn, the Dragon Wilson, plays a cop-fighting, escaped virtual criminals who have materialized into the real world. One of them, a digitized woman designed for pleasure, becomes the film's strange heartbeat. She's programmed to love, to obey, to die, and respawn. But when she begins to want something real, the film stops being about machines. It becomes about the fragility of human desire in an era obsessed with control. Critics wrote it off as low-budget pulp. Yet the script quietly predicted the world we live in now. Avatars, digital intimacy, blurred lines between truth and projection. In Virtual Combat, humanity isn't destroyed by technology, it dissolves inside it. The movie ends with a reflection on the screen itself, as if asking us who's watching whom. Because when reality starts to feel artificial, maybe the most dangerous virus isn't in the system, it's in us. Bonus fact: Nemesis, 1992. Some films warned us about machines. Nemesis warned us about becoming one. Released the same year as Project Shadowchaser, Albert Pune's Nemesis was dismissed by critics as a chaotic cyberpunk curiosity, but it was more prophetic than anyone realized. The story follows Alex Rain, a half-cyborg cop-hunting terrorist who claimed to be saving humanity. Every mission leaves him with more metal and less flesh, until his body is just a blueprint of lost identity. Behind the strobe lights and dystopian backstreets, Nemesis spoke a truth too bleak for its decade, that the 21st century wouldn't be conquered by machines, but by the human desire to upgrade away our own flaws. In Pune's future, the government isn't building robots to replace people, it's convincing people to become robots willingly. The film was shot in the haze of early digital cinema on a budget that couldn't afford its own ambition. But what it lacked in polish, it made up for in vision. It captured the unease of a generation caught between flesh and data, freedom and control. Today, Nemesis feels less like fiction and more like footage from the future. We've already entered a world where memories can be deleted, emotions outsourced, and conscience compressed into code. Some films fail on screen, others were never even allowed to fail. The 1990 seconds were the years when Hollywood looked into a mirror and saw circuits instead of skin. These 5 films dismissed as low-budget oddities were really fragments of a confession. They were telling us that the line between justice and control, between man and machine, had already blurred, and no one wanted to admit it. Project Shadowchaser showed a soldier who no longer needed a soul. The silencer revealed obedience as a form of slavery. Street Night carried the guilt of wars that came home. The expert dismantled the illusion of lawful justice. And Virtual Combat closed the loop, showing how reality itself could be rewritten by design. Together, they formed a silent prophecy that the age of mechanical morality had begun, and we were the ones writing the code. Each frame flickered like a dying signal from a lost era, warning us that progress without conscience doesn't save humanity, it replaces it. The reels are rusting now, their images fading in storage rooms and collectors' basements. But their message remains. What we create to protect ourselves often becomes the thing we need protection from. Because in the end, light may reveal truth, but it also burns. They called them failures, forgotten tapes, cheap imitations of bigger dreams. But sometimes, the smallest films carry the loudest warnings. Each of these stories about machines, justice, and the fragile code of human morality still asks the same question 30 years later. Did we ever stop programming ourselves to obey? Tell me, which of these films do you think revealed the most dangerous truth? The one about the soldier who forgot he wasn't human, or the one about the human who wished he wasn't? Leave your thoughts below. And if you believe some films are buried not because they failed, but because they told the truth too soon, then stay with us. Real Secrets, where the truth was always in the edit.